how many European bikers there are. Even in they have in Australia. They have Hell's Angels in Australia. They have them in. It's so. Can you imagine a French biker? I think you stink. You want to go have?
Probably would not start shooting to them.
Let's do a duel.
Yeah, no, that's sort of the mystique of the biker, the outlaw, the renegade, the rebel, the dude that's out on his own like that has appeal around the globe. I remember when I was living in Egypt, I will mention that, they had a Harley-Davidson dealership, and there was a small gang. Like, it was a club, they said.
It's not a gang, it's a club.
It's a club, but they would get together and put on the leather and ride their bikes around in Cairo. Because they like that image that they get from our movies and our TV shows.
So anyway, they're all together. So that was the most surprising thing to me about this story, was to find out that, first of all, they recovered over 100 guns, but only scores of casings. A score, let's remember, is 12. Am I correct?
That was 20, but in either case, it's a relatively small number. So it seems like not a lot of...
7 years ago. What was that?
I don't know.
Let's look it up. What's the score?
I'm bad at math, and I'm going to consider that part of math, even though it's not really... But so, a lot of guns, not a lot of ammunition actually spent it. Now, look, a lot of people were injured. 18 wounded, 9 dead. For a single shooting, that is a large amount. Even in America, that's a large number of dead in one shooting.
Am I alone in thinking that this is kind of cool?
Kind of cool?
Yes.
Feel free to make your case.
No, because first of all, they weren't shooting non-bikers. They were shooting at each other.
Now, there were customers at the restaurant. It was a Twin Peaks. There was the possibility. I mean, for all we know, maybe it'll come out that one of the dead or some of the wounded could possibly have been customers.
You gotta crack a few eggs. No, I'm saying, of course this is horrible. These guys are criminals. I'm glad that they arrested them and get these guys off the street and what have you. But I don't know.
It's like a relic, I think, is what you're saying. It's like a relic of another time or movie.
Yeah, to see gangs fighting each other like this on such a massive scale. And
such a huge number. I mean, they said that at one point, like I said, 30 different gang members on two sides between the Banditos and the Cossacks, although there's a possibility that there were Hells Angels there as well, all shooting each other, literally flipping over tables at the Twin Peaks to use as cover against the incoming fire. It is like something out of a movie.
No, but here's the thing. Like, it's not like, say, the Valentine's Day Massacre, which in Chicago, gangland style. So that was for control. That was tactical. This just seems like it started as a fist fight, and then it kind of escalated. So there wasn't really a point to this. That's what it seems like.
Initially, that's what it seems like. As we're getting additional information, it seems like this might have been planned. So you have the gang sort of coming into contact with each other at this Twin Peaks. Now, a Kansas City area police officer who also runs an organization that attempts to get insiders into the gangs to try to diffuse some of the gang violence says, you can tell by the number of weapons involved that these guys came looking for a fight. They were prepared. That's a possibility. It could be that many of them routinely carry guns.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say exactly, but we do know that in that area in Texas, there had been sort of jockeying for power over different criminal enterprises between the Banditos and the Cossacks, and that the Banditos had been trying to get the Cossacks to play ball with them, and then it looked like the Cossacks were actually going to go with the Hells Angels because the Cossacks are a relatively small gang in comparison to those two. So at this point, it's impossible to really say. It could be that they had not anticipated violence, certainly not to this level, and it just sort of got out of control, or it could be that this is their power play to gain control of access to drug sales in that area, prostitution rings, that sort of thing.
Again, it's just, I find it charming.
I don't think you will find another news show where the word charming is used.
I just find it charming. There's these old-style gangs, and they're still trying to do it. I don't know why I find that stuff. It's not as scary to me. It's just like there's these losers.
It's not as scary so long as it's this isolated incident.
Yeah.
If this was more common, if this was back in the 60s or 70s, where people were like routinely worried about Hells Angels riding in and rampaging and stuff like that. It's rarer, so I guess there's the ability to look at it in a slightly different light.
Plus, it's Texas, right? This is what they do for fun, right? This is what
each other.
I mean, this was just Clive and Bundy just happened a year ago, and I mean, this is what these guys do. So it's the bikers one day, it's the ranchers the next day, it's the Islamists the next day. It's all these different people. They like shooting.
No, so that's totally true, and it's interesting that. I mean, I'm not going to go out there as some liberal commentators have and said, well, look at them. No one's going to call them thugs because they're typically white. Now, I bet you will. I'm sure that if you were to track it down, motorcycle gangs, I assume it is still largely a white gang. Essentially, it's named after the sort of spirit of the Mexican rebel.
But they're still white?
They are largely white. I'm sure that it has some diversity in it. But it is interesting that
affirmative action program.
Affirmative action. They have to include some.
Come on, you guys. We have to get some more women.
Yeah. I don't know how many women there are. Okay. But it is interesting that you had nothing like this in Baltimore and Ferguson. A shooting that leaves 18 wounded, 9 dead. And yet, immediately, even the ones who are just protesting, they're bad seeds. But in this case, I don't see that sort of outrage. I expect that there will be some of it. I mean, it's hard not to when you have this many people dying. Now, I do want to say it's interesting, some of the articles we've been reading coming out of this delve into how it is that we developed this culture of motorcycle gangs, and it apparently came largely out of the war.
Yes, after World War II.
That is interesting.
Soldiers came back, and they, of course, felt distance from their own society, and they had a hard time assimilating. And then they learned how to ride. Some of them learned how to ride Harleys in the war, in the military.
Yeah, exactly, because the military would routinely use them,
Yeah, so that's how that all got started.
Yeah.
This affected veterans coming back
with PTSD.
Yeah, definitely with PTSD. They used to call it, they were shell shock back then, which would be better if they still called it shell shock, because we know what the F that is.
Which is PTSD.
PTSD, it sounds like, you know, you need to get, here's a pill or something. Yeah. But shell shock, you're like, oh, that guy's messed up. We have to help him.
Yeah, and I do have to say, they have, in some of the research we've been doing, they talked with some of the initial Banditos and Hells Angels, and they talk about why they joined these groups and what the group is meant to sort of symbolize. And I have to say, at the risk of Banditos, Hells Angels, I love you. Don't come after me.
Oh, me too.
But it's nonsense speak. Like it's all about the open road. It's about the man that's biking the open road. And before you attack me saying, "Oh, John, you live on your bicycle. You don't understand the biker mentality." Look, I, for years, did not have a car. All I had was a motorcycle. I have owned a Harley Davidson. I bought into it slightly because of the mystique, but I also have spent a lot of time on highways on motorcycles. There's nothing particularly amazing about it. It's a ton of wind buffeting you. It's bugs hitting you in the face, and it gets boring, and your ass hurts almost instantly, especially on a Harley Davidson. So, look, I understand that you want to rebel. I think that there are more productive ways possibly to do it.
Maybe it's just to get women. I bought a Harley when I was younger, and I had to give up.
Did you really?
Because my mom wouldn't let me ride it.
Did she really? My mom was not happy when she found out that I had.
No, my brother did buy a motorcycle when I was younger, and he smashed it immediately.
Oh, wow.
And he smashed it into the side of a car, went flying, and then my dad made him get rid of it.
Really?
Yeah.
I can never tell when you're joking.
No, that's a
that happened to my uncle as well.
He had a Suzuki 750. I remember I used to go in and sniff the gas in the can. That's why I'm like this.
I believe you when you say that.
I did. Gas smells nice. No wonder.
It smells nice. And you feel better after you sniff it.
Well, I feel something.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the current death toll. Maybe we'll find out some more about how much planning went into this, if this is perhaps the beginning of a larger sort of campaign between these two gangs. I would be worried if I was in Texas, especially when the day after this shooting happens, Texas legislature is considering increased ability for Texans to walk around with their guns open, basically. That seems like exactly what they need there now. Anyway, let's move on to something slightly different. In a move likely to be popular both with liberals and with many libertarians as well, President Obama is expected to reveal details in the very near future of a move, an executive order that would ban the sale of certain types of military equipment to police departments around the United States. Now, let's first talk about what will be banned. Banned will be tracked armored vehicles, bayonets, grenade launchers, camouflage uniforms, and large caliber weapons and ammunition. All of those currently available to police departments, which I'm sure that you can make the case for an extreme situation in which you would need large caliber weapons and ammunition, but camouflage largely tracked armored vehicles. I don't know how often they need that, actually.
If you need camouflage in Missouri, you have a bigger problem than the local police can solve.
Yeah, it's frequently a problem that people see cops before the cops get to shoot them. That's the problem. I don't understand that, though. Like,
I can see the cops.
And grenade launchers. I mean, we're talking about bayonets.
Bayonets!
I did not know that they used bayonets. The last I heard of bayonets was World War II, I thought. Possibly Vietnam.
Well, sometimes, Johnny, the cops will show up to, like, an armed robbery at a 7-Eleven, and the robbers have built trenches. So you want to get your bayonets. So you can do a little hand.
Bayonet.
Yeah, bang. You do a little hand-to-hand.
Use flamethrower, briefly. Maybe clear out some of the trenches in the 7-Eleven.
Yeah. But I don't know if the local cops get the flamethrowers.
After this, Obama's not going to let them, apparently. Now,
So this is a good thing.
This is a good thing. I mean, look, if you think that cops shouldn't routinely have easy access to this sort of equipment, then it is a good thing, yes.
And by the way,
It's something we've been asking for.
and Barack Obama is only following the recommendations of the panel. Did he appoint that panel?
Yes, I believe it was some months ago we reported on it, and both
Thank
while
God.
Obama, yeah, exactly, and both while Obama is considering this, Congress is also considering certain types of laws that might somewhat restrict access to it. I would imagine with Republican control of them, it would be less restrictive on some of this equipment, since they generally are more in favor of police departments having access to it.
Well, it's really, honestly, Johnny, I mean, I felt discouraged the last couple of years as just seeing the kind of police state that we've kind of fallen into, not only because of the surveillance state that we live under, but because of the impunity which cops have trampled on civil rights since 9/11, right? So this is when all this militarization, because they're all supposed to be protecting us from terrorism, which is bullshit. Okay, I don't need my local police protecting me from terrorism. That doesn't exist, by the way.
I don't think there's one ISIS fighter that has been bayoneted yet. Maybe there's one, maybe I
So this is just a war on the American people that Barack Obama seems now to want to start slowly turning around. They stop seeing citizens as the enemy, even though he called out the police to correct the heads of peaceful protesters during Occupy Wall Street, or he let it happen. Well, yes, the Democratic mayors are the ones who called out the cops, the union cops, to go crack the heads of people fighting for their union benefits, right? Meanwhile, the Wall Street giving the cops all this money are trying to screw their pensions. But cops not really that long. They're not really long-sighted. Far-sighted.
So we have some more details about what, and again, we're going to have to wait a little bit for the actual, the set details of this executive order, but this is some of the early information we have access to. Other kinds of equipment will be available to most police departments as long as they meet national standards, track their use, and receive approval from the federal government before selling or transferring them. Items on the controlled equipment list include aircraft, wheeled tactical vehicles, that sounds interesting, mobile command and control units, battering rams, and riot gear. And in their initial reporting about this potential executive order, the government highlighted one policy by the University of Texas System Police that prohibits the use of military vehicles in response to exercises of the First Amendment right to free speech or as a part of any political public demonstration or display of police resources. Now, if we take them seriously in that area, then I think a lot of people are going to be very happy about this, because it's not just that the police have access to this equipment, it's the way that they use it, the times they bring it out. And it seems like the police want to crack down on protesters with this equipment, and that is 100% not what wheeled tactical vehicles and armored vehicles are for.
So that was supposed to be to fight terrorism, but the Department of Homeland Security actually issued an edict to all the local police departments, and in it, they said you should see groups of peaceful protesters as potential terrorists. That literally was in there. I reported on the Jimmy Dore show a few years ago. So when we make the assertion, or I make the assertion that the police see citizens as the enemy, that's not hyperbole. They literally, in print. In fact, we found out that the National Guard was given a directive in Ferguson to see those protesters as the enemy.
And look, I honestly think that you don't need to put it in writing. I think that the natural reaction of a lot of people put in that situation as cops is they're going to see the protesters as a potential threat. And when you tell them ahead of time it just reinforces the worst instincts that a lot of people, I think, very reasonably would have when put in that situation. We want their training to sort of help them move past that knee-jerk reaction. We don't want it to reinforce their worst instincts.
But we've been finding out that the training is the exact opposite. Is that they put the safety of the police officers paramount in every situation.
Exactly.
Which we've talked about this, you and I, before, and you've made this. So, well, then what's the difference between a cop and me? I'm more scared for my safety than anybody else's, too. I thought a policeman was supposed to worry about the community safety, and that's why we give them extra respect, and we give them extra ability to enforce the law. We give them a gun. Give them the power of the state. For those reasons, if the cop's safety is paramount in every situation, then he's not really risking anything.
Exactly.
Right? You're supposed to risk your own safety for the communities.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm not going to go into full details, but there are some stipulations for that second list of equipment. If they do not put into play the correct sorts of regulations for the use of those bits of equipment, then they could be banned for 60 days from purchasing more. But that seems like a fairly light response to it. But it could also be referred to the Justice Department for civil rights investigation. So that is positive, even if it seems fairly easy to get by these sorts of stipulations. It is something. And this is a move that we both, I think, largely have been requesting, and that we're going to be fairly happy with this. But it's also Rand Paul said, "I see no reason to have a 20-ton mine-resistant ambush protection vehicle in the streets of any city in our country." I think that's reasonable. "I see no reason at all for that. I'm all for giving the police bulletproof vests or giving the weapons ordinary guns, things they can use to defend themselves. We wanted to separate and keep the army away from policing. They're supposed to be different." I think that he is largely correct there.
Yes, and again, what we said, an army is there to fight an enemy, and a police is there to protect the community. That's different. You're there, instead of when they went out and the cops are already amped up, like you said, and if you give them the directive, see them as the enemy, instead of the other one, hey, remember, your job is to protect their civil rights and their constitutional rights, along with securing peace in this community. That's our directive, but that's not the directive they're given. They're given as the squelch protesters. That's the directive.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that Hillary Clinton has also recently made calls for it. So it seems like for them to stop the sale of these surplus military equipment.
Oh, good. It's good to see she put her finger in the wind and found out that her other position was shitty.
Just took a little while.
Yeah.
So it looks like regardless of which way we go in the next election, there's probably going to be, at least in the short term, some moving a little bit backwards on this policy in terms of selling that equipment. I think that they got away with it for a long time. People in the wake of 9/11 were very willing to give grenade launchers and resistant vehicles to the police. But now we're seeing how it's not going to be used against ISIS streaming over the southern border. It's going to be used against us in cases where you may not agree with the protesters in all cases, but it's going to be Americans who are being targeted with that military equipment.
And who benefits? They always ask yourself that question. Who benefits from the militarization of local police departments? I have to guess it's the military-industrial complex, right? Because once those tanks and grenade launchers go to the local cops, they've got to replace them, don't they? The Army still needs tanks and grenade launchers and stuff, right?
Likely.
So that's what I think the over-militarization is. It's certainly the money. Where does it go? Seems like it goes to the military-industrial complex.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to one more story before we hit our first break. I know we're running a little bit behind, but there's a new entrant for the presidency, actually.
Oh, you're kidding.
There is. It's an exciting one. I think he might go all the way. Our long wait is finally over. Lindsey Graham is going to be running for the Republican nomination for the presidency. Or at the very least, he is announcing that he will announce in a few weeks that he is running. This is the weird way that we work in 2015, where people want as much media attention as possible, so they announce their announcement ahead of time. So we're going to give him some of that media coverage, but perhaps not in the way that he might want. We're going to highlight a quote from Lindsey Graham from just this past weekend. He was at the Lincoln Day Dinner, which is a major Iowa Republican Party fundraiser that generally it's expected that everyone who's going to be running for the Republican nomination had better be there. So he was there, and other potential nominees were there as well, and they were talking about the threat of ISIS, and it got a little bit bloodthirsty. So first here is Senator Lindsey Graham, newly minted as the potential next Republican nominee. He said, "If I'm the president of the United States and you're thinking about joining Al-Qaeda or ISIL," anybody thinking about that? I'm not going to call a judge. I'm going to call a drone, and we're going to kill you. Now, it might be possible that he is talking about foreign-born people who are going to be joining ISIS, in which case it's just pretty bloodthirsty. But he did not make any distinction there about what if an American is considering going to join ISIS. Now, I think in many cases, people watching this video are going to be like, well, I don't care what happens to those people if they're going to be joining the enemy, joining the terrorists. And I understand to some extent, but they still do have constitutional rights. And for him to say ahead of time, he is going to do the thing that we criticize Obama on all the time, the outside of the bounds of his constitutional authority killing of American citizens. He says ahead of time, that is what I will continue if I become president.
Well, Johnny, I think the bedrock of our democracy is state killing without judicial process.
Yes.
Isn't that what we're all about in America?
If an analyst says, I read one of his emails, and he seems like he's considering it, don't take chances, bomb his house. If other people die as well, you got to crack a few eggs.
I mean, I'm all for court systems and what have you, due process, civil rights, in theory. But if you're thinking about joining ISIS, that all goes out the window.
Yeah.
Thought crimes are important.
Yeah. They're the worst kinds of crimes.
And the thing is about Lindsey Graham, everybody in the GOP field right now running for president, what they're really doing is hoping to get their own show on Fox. Whereas Lindsey Graham's hoping to get his own show on Bravo, if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't understand what you're saying. I don't get what you're saying there. There's a fact.
Well, we both knew he was going to run. He just finally came out of the closet and started running, which is nice to see.
See what you
He's secretive.
Yeah. And it's interesting, by the way. So we had two bits of news that we have today. One, that he says, forget the Constitution. If an American is going to join, we'll just blow him up. And then also, there's Obama coming out and saying that we're going to stop the military from selling some surplus equipment to the police departments. Now, I think that largely many Republicans, especially libertarians, are going to be in favor of that, but not universally. And those are both, if you're a crazed Republican who's worried about Big Brother, the government, getting too big and trampling on the rights of Americans, like, how could you be in favor of, fuck the judge, we're going to call a drone, and we're also going to arm the police to the teeth with rocket launchers, grenade launchers, and things like that. Like, if you are worried about the government running amok, those are not things that you should be interested in.
So you're saying, Johnny, you're picking up on maybe a little bit of a contradiction in Lindsey Graham.
Potential contradiction.
For public conservatism, small government, and his also public embrace of state killing without any judicial process. Those seem to be in contradiction.
A little bit, yes.
Is what you're saying. So maybe he's pandering to people who want to kill brown people who are different than us. I think that's what maybe that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact, too, because as if Barack Obama isn't already constantly drone bombing ISIS, ISIL, Al-Qaeda, anybody.
Which we are.
If you happen to be in Yemen, we're going to bomb you. Yeah. Yes, we're doing that all the time. Again, but there's never a lack of bloodlust in the Republican primaries.
Yeah. Yeah, he personally wants government to be as small as possible while still being large enough to kill you without any proof necessary whatsoever. Now, when you talk about bloodthirstiness, look, Lindsey Graham is entering, he's not the first person who's going to be running on the Republican side, he's entering a field, and that field is already awash in blood. And so perhaps that's why he's coming out so hardcore. At that same event, by the way, Scott Walker and I believe it's actually Rick Santorum and Rick Perry were also there, all making similarly bloodthirsty comments about ISIS. Now, this is going to come from, I believe it's actually Rick Perry. I think the graphic might be wrong. No, I'm wrong. It's actually Rick Santorum. Let's go to this next quote. This is Rick Santorum on the threat from ISIS. I've been very, very clear about how we're going to deal with ISIS. They want to bring back a 7th century version of Islam. So here's my suggestion. We load up our bombers and we bomb them back to the 7th century. Rick Santorum, I wish that someone would take his advice and would communicate with the U.S. military, send some bombers to Syria and Iraq. Why aren't we doing that already?
When are we going to start bombing in the Middle East? I mean, sure, we've been bombing Iraq for 4 straight presidents.
Yeah.
So what?
And we are bombing Syria literally as we stream this video to the internet. The only thing that he could possibly mean is that it's not that we need bombers, it's that we need to load them up with something we are not loading them up with now. Bombs, yes. Perhaps he is implying that we need to use weapons of mass destruction, because we are already loading up bombers with bombs. If not weapons of mass destruction, what could he possibly mean by that?
I thought they already were living in the 7th century. What is, you know what I mean? That's what they always try to say about these guys anyway, and it's nice to see the biggest bloodlust coming from the biggest conservatives. I mean, the biggest Christian conservatives, which just goes to show you religion, the people who claim to follow it most closely, is nothing but hypocritical, contradictory superstition.
Are you implying that it does not actually stop them from sort of base human instinct to kill our enemies and it does not consider diplomacy?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Johnny. It does not short circuit any of those reptilian brained impulses of revenge, kill somebody different. You know, Jesus came to stop all that stuff. His whole thing was turn the other cheek and love your enemy and treat your neighbor as yourself. And I give you one commandment. That's what Jesus said. I give you one commandment. Love your enemy as yourself. So they don't follow any of that shit, but they want us to not be able to get birth control.
That's true. No, you're wrong, though. Oh. They do love their enemy as themselves. They want to bomb our enemy. They also want drone strikes against Americans. To some extent, They are consistent, I suppose.
And be careful. I've said it before. Whatever we do to people overseas, we will eventually do to ourselves, our own citizens. We're already torturing our own citizens. We're already torturing our own soldiers, Chelsea Manning.
That's true. That is true. And Scott Walker also with bloodthirsty comments about how we need to take the fight to ISIS. Again, we are currently engaged in a war against ISIS. I don't know. Other than sending it, so in the case of Santorum, the only way you can up the ante with the bombers is stronger bombs, like weapons of mass destruction. In the case of Scott Walker, the only way you can up the ante in terms of taking the fight to them is ground troops. And so if you vote for one of these three, you cannot pretend that you do not know what you're going to get when they embroil us with ground troops in Iraq and Syria again.
And I just wanted to ask Lindsey Graham, when was the last time ISIS attacked us? They've never attacked us. Ever. I mean, our country, our homeland, now that we're using the Russian words, they've never attacked us. Meanwhile, we've been non-stop bombing. You know why there is an ISIS? Because we went in and bombed their country called Iraq, and we took them out of power. And then we said that you guys can't be in the military anymore in Iraq. So we disbanded them. So now there's all these military guys who've been military for their entire life. And George Bush said, well, let's get rid of them. What could possibly go wrong? Well, now we have ISIS. So this is what could possibly go wrong. But still, they don't affect us. They're not attacking us. They're attacking us in their country.
Yes.
So when we're in someone else's country killing people, we're not defending America. We're killing people who are defending their country.
Yes. And in the meantime, making it far easier for them to strike Americans if they want to.
Yes.
Bring the Americans to them for them to target.
We're over there. We're protecting America's interest in the Middle East, John. And you know what that interest is? Fucking oil! Yeah. Why are we there? Our interest. That's what our interest is.
I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. And so we're bombing.
To be fair, I have an electric car, so I'm literally not interested in that. But I would advise as many people as possible to join me in that.
We couldn't be bombing more. I mean, I guess we could always bomb more, but you know, we're bombing Syria now. We've been bombing Iraq since 1990. We've been bombing. We're bombing Gaza. The Israelis. They bomb the occupied territories. We support them.
Yeah.
So how much more bombing can we do of Muslim?
25% more.
Okay.
That is the correct answer coming from Lindsey Graham. Anyway, so that is Lindsey Graham, the new entrant to the Republican nominating process. Enjoy. We'll have more info as he releases it. Although, of course, he has absolutely no chance whatsoever. So we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we've got the conspiracy theory that more than 1/3 of all Republicans believe. That is going to be fun. And more news, including Saudi Arabia. Amazing job posting. What are they looking for? You'll find out after this break. Monday edition of the Young Turks in the new studio. We are christening it as we speak. Jimmy Dore, myself, Johnny DeRola. Jake Huger is out. He's in New York for the full week, and excitingly, tomorrow they're going to be doing the first hour from the YouTube space, New York. Jake Huger, Kyle Kuklinski of Secular Talk. It should be awesome.
Kyle Kuklinski.
Yes. It should be awesome. Yeah, people have been waiting for that duo in a while. I think it's going to be an awesome show. And then I believe we're going to have the second hour here. Anna, and I believe myself. Are you?
No, I'll be here Wednesday and Friday.
Awesome, cool. Okay, so we're going to be doing, it's sort of a bi-coastal edition of the Young Turks. We don't often get to do that, but it should be exciting. So be sure to tune in. Both of those live, although from different studios.
Johnny, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm not bi-coastal.
You're not at all?
Not that there's anything wrong with it. Not even in college.
Not even one. Okay. So we've got some tweets that I want to read. Hashtag TYT Lives you guys have been sending in. Sean Ferris says, apparently Jimmy Dore and Jay DeRola are surrounded by magic elves who do all the actual work. They're not elves, but they do all the actual work. And they're literally standing and sitting behind the cameras as we speak and in the control room. I wish we had an actual camera on them. We will get that very soon. Let's see, Michael Gibbs says, I won't bag the Young Turks for their technical faults. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked. One of my favorite quotes from Jurassic Park. That's I think that's what they said. Yeah, that was Jurassic Park, right? I think it was. Anyway, let's see. Raper Madness, referring to what we were saying about the Texas shooting. It's not something out of a movie. It's much worse than that. It's something out of Texas. That is true. Chris Bradshaw says, no bayonets. Great. So now if the Kaiser's army marches on Harlem, we're screwed. That is awesome. And I thank you guys for that.
Can I read one? This guy, Sam C.W., going to correct me. He says, did you seriously just say ISIS is defending their country? They are committing genocide against their country, Jimmy. So I guess that means we're over there protecting Iraq.
Yes.
We're protecting Iraq from ISIS. Again, we're protecting the Iraqi people. Yeah. First, we protected them from Saddam. And then we
first from Iran, technically, by supporting
Saddam. First,
then from
Saddam, and now from ISIS.
Yes.
So again, the people who live there, we have to protect them from the people who live there. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, look, if you want to make the case that ISIS would be terrible for the Iraqi people, which I think they would be terrible for the Iraqi people, you can make the case that we should send troops there to protect them from ISIS. But that does not mean that when they get there, they're protecting us here at home.
Right.
That is a different thing. You can have that conversation, but you can't conflate the two conversations. Or at least if you are, you're being intellectually dishonest.
And to be intellectually honest, the United States could not give a crap about the freedom, liberty, or well-being of the Iraqi people.
I would assume that is largely the case.
Yes. Okay, so let's not fool ourselves and think we're fighting genocide. We're committing genocide in Iraq, right? Because the Oil for War program, the two people who were picked to run it, both quit because they said it was genocidal, and that was our program in Iraq. So again, ISIS is the bad guys, and America's coming to save people is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump. Actually, really fast before we jump back into the news, I do not have members yet. I'm sure Jenny will get them soon. And so until then, thank you to all of you, especially those of you watching this broadcast right now. We're going to jump right back into the news with my favorite story of the day. If you had any remaining faith that Democrats and Republicans could join together to solve the very real problems facing America, I want you to consider the results of this poll. Many Americans, Republicans, believe that Obama wants to invade Texas. Let's bring up poll results here. Coming from public policy polling, I understand there are a lot of numbers there. For now, just focus on the ones on the left-hand side under base. 32% of Republicans respond that the government is trying to take over Texas.
32%.
That's 1 in 3 think it's trying to take over Texas. Now, I think you need to add to that the 28% who say they're not sure. That is 60% either think he is trying to take over Texas, or they think he might be trying to take over Texas.
Sounds plausible that our military, which we salute nonstop at every football game and all the time, and every chance we can give them lip service.
Yes.
But then, you know what? They also might be traitors.
They might be traitors who are willing to take over. They're not trying to. It's a military exercise.
Yeah.
It's called Jade Helm. Look, yes, it's a scary sounding name. I will give you that, but they're not literally trying to take over parts of America. really fast.
We already took over Texas.
We did it.
I don't know if you understand.
I think that's what the fear is.
We
It's that,
already-
oh God, in the back of our mind, this has happened before. Bring that poll back up, actually, for just a second, that same one. I want you to take a look at another number there. Oh, no, let's go back to the previous one. So you're seeing there the overall numbers on the left, and then broken down by who they support in the Republican primary. Those who support Rick Perry, 76% think that the government is trying to take over Texas, and an additional 7% aren't sure. Over 80% of those who are going to vote for Rick Perry think that they're trying to invade a state in the United States. That is amazing to me. But perhaps more amazing is when you get more specific. Here, we're not just talking about Republicans, we're talking about Tea Partiers. Go to this next graphic. It's a larger number. Tea Partiers, 75% either think the government is trying to take over America or they're not sure. Fully 50% say yes, they're going to invade Texas. Obama is going to be riding on a tank as they roll past the border cities.
You know, when this doesn't happen, I'm sure those Tea Partiers are all going to feel silly.
I'm sure they will remember this when it doesn't actually happen.
Just like they felt silly when Barack released his long-form birth certificate. Remember how silly they felt then?
They felt so silly that they've continued to assert that he is born in Kenya.
Remember when it turned out how embarrassed they were when it turned out the Iraq War was a big lie for oil?
There was pie on their face.
Oh,
in that case, they're so red cheeked to this day.
Red cheeked.
Yeah, you're allowed to believe whatever ridiculous thing, and you're allowed to say whatever ridiculous thing. But when it turns out not to be true, you don't get called on it.
Yeah,
and we're on the internet. Feel free to show us a clip where we said something absolutely crazy. I don't remember saying that George W. Bush was going to invade any the United States. No, then I wasn't on the air then. Maybe I was saying crazy stuff in my private life. I don't know. We also have quotes from...
He's still getting advice. So Jeb Bush now is getting foreign policy advice from George W. Bush, but only after Jeb promises to tell him about the rabbits.
That's my favorite references that you make. You and your buddy Connor making those great literary references there. Now, at the same time that too many Republicans and too many Tea Partiers believe that this is going on, one of the reasons they believe it is their elected officials, those who they, I think, foolishly support, are continually coming up with crazy quotes where they continue to push this out into the media. So Louis Gohmert, one of our favorite politicians here, says, "Once I observed the map depicting hostile, permissive, and uncertain states and locations," referring to some of the maps that are being used in this military exercise, "I was rather appalled that the hostile areas amazingly have a Republican majority and believe in the sanctity of the United States Constitution." We can agree to disagree on how much they actually believe in the sanctity of the United States Constitution and our access to equal rights as a people. He goes on to say, "Such labeling tends to make people who have grown leery of federal government overreach become suspicious of whether their big brother government anticipates certain states may start another civil war or be overtaken by foreign radical Islamist elements which have been reported to be just across our border." Please leave that up for a second, because there's like 6 different crazy things there. He says that at the same time, you should be terrified of the federal government's military forces and Islamists who are going to invade from Mexico. You should be worried about both of those things. But he also says, if you analyze the language in the first part of that sentence, he says, such labeling makes suspicious people become suspicious of the big brother government, where he tries to make you suspicious of them. It's like this, it's this machine of insanity and paranoia that he just keeps feeding quarters into. And unfortunately, it's working. We see the numbers here. Those, especially those living in Texas, but around the country, they're willing to accept this insanity because their elected representatives are going on the news and the media every day and spouting it off.
And they have the number one news channel on cable is also, not doing a lot to put this fire out.
Exactly, yeah. We have Sean Hannity who's continually bringing experts on to say how they should be worried about this.
So here's what I think is interesting about this, because it keeps, what I've been saying since Barack Obama got elected, is that why do they keep long-form birth certificate? He's going to invade Texas. He's a Muslim. He's from Kenya. Why do they do that? Why don't they just, if he's really as bad as they say he is, Barack Obama, why don't you just criticize the stuff that he's actually doing? Why do you have to make up stuff like this? Like he's going to invade Texas, so why do you have to keep doing this to keep your base shitting their pants? And the reason is because the stuff that Barack Obama is doing that they should criticize him for This is stuff they're in bed with him with. The military.
I thought you were going to say shortly that he was not doing that many bad things, and then I realized, no, he's not that.
No. The stuff that he's doing that's bad, they're all for. The TPP deal. The Republicans, yes, fuck over our own workers.
Yes.
Screw Americans. Screw the workers in America because rich people will be able to exploit poorer people in other countries, which is a win for Jesus.
Yeah.
Also, why don't they criticize his banking policy? They're all for it. They don't criticize any of the things. We bombed 7 different Muslim countries since 9/11. Nobody's got a problem. They want him to bomb more. Yeah. So the things that Barack Obama is doing that he should be criticized for, they're all on board for it. So they have to invent shit. They had to pretend they didn't like his healthcare plan, which Barack Obama had to reach all the way across the island to the Heritage Foundation to get his healthcare plan. They had to pretend they didn't like it. So that's why they look so foolish, because the stuff that Barack Obama is doing is the stuff that they're on board for.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. And look, I know that liberals, we're not immune from sort of these speculations about politicians' backgrounds. I think that I'm trying to come up with examples for George Bush about the theories about what he had done in his past, but those largely turned out, I think, to be mostly true.
Yeah, that he didn't serve
him for exactly. For the
he didn't serve what he said he did. He was in the
exactly.
campaign.
Yeah. So I would argue that the difference is that those were largely true, and also we did criticize him specifically for his policies. Like, we can attack him on going to war in Iraq, and then we can attack Obama's continuation of those wars and have some intellectual consistency there that they are unwilling to match us on.
I didn't attack George Bush for playing golf. Yeah, or taking too many days off at the ranch. I didn't like that. These are not. The more days off, the better, as far as what George Bush was concerned. That's how I could take the whole rest of your term off. I don't give a shit. So peace. There was plenty of stuff when we criticized George Bush, it was about stuff that actually was happening, policies, things that were going on. Yeah. And we didn't have to make up conspiracy theories about. Some people would say the 9/11 stuff was conspiracy theories, but there's enough real stuff to criticize George Bush on. That's why I didn't ask for his birth certificate. I didn't think he was, in bed with Martians, kind of attack South Carolina, or you know what I mean. We didn't come up with that stuff anyway. Yeah, and that's the difference between being a progressive and a conservative. I think conservatives, it's pretty clear that they're much more in touch with their reptilian fear center, right? So, fear works for everybody. That's why politicians always push that button. But it seems the more fundamentalist you are religiously, the more fear plays a part of your worldview.
Yeah, and I understand that any conservatives watching this is going to be like, well, that's not fair. I could say the same thing about you guys. No. But if you look into the actual psychological research that's been done, there does tend to be a correlation between more anxiety, less ability to differentiate between shades of gray, more need for certainty, you can't tolerate ambiguity. Those things are correlated with conservatism. And that doesn't mean that being a conservative makes you that way, but it might be that if you are that way, you will find conservative policies to be make you feel better. Yeah, it's all you're worried about the things you see in the world, and you need some security. And then simple-minded policies tend to make you feel secure.
And it's so funny that they always also rail against the nanny state, yet they want a daddy to take care of them. They'll give all their freedom away. If you're going to get the bed, you're going to drone bomb somebody without giving him the due process.
Yeah. They don't like Big Brother, but they do like Big Daddy. We got to make a shirt.
Hey, Big Daddy. We should make that. That's a good shirt.
I'm gonna work on it. I want to walk around all day with a shirt that says Big Daddy on it. You know what? That'll make me more popular.
I'm going to steal that idea and sell it on my website.
Yeah. So really fast, before we go to our second break, in which Anna Kasparian will be joining us and we'll be doing a second hour, there's 2 more TYT Lives I want to read. Big Doc says, you may not be stupid because you're Republican, but if you're stupid, you're most likely Republican. And that might end up being true in some percentage of the cases. And Joey Incognito says, George W. wouldn't invade a U.S. state. Hell, he wouldn't even invade New Orleans after it was attacked by a hurricane. That's true as well. And another policy that we rightfully attacked him on, not getting into conspiracy theories about whether he was a baby plant by communist Soviet Union decades ago to become president and then wreck the U.S. economy. Conspiracy theory I read about today. But anyway, we're going to take our break. Continue to tweet us at #TYT Live. When we come back, Anna Kasparian will be joining us, and it should be an awesome second hour. Back in just a few.
I'm Turks. I'm joining John and Jimmy in the second hour of the show. I'm taking charge, though, all right? So I got a tweet from someone indicating that they're upset at feeling as though they were shortchanged in the first hour. It wasn't a full hour. Just please, guys, be patient with us because we're obviously moving into the new studio. We're not in the smaller studio right now. This is the brand new one. We're obviously working out some kinks, and along with that does come some technical issues, but we're doing our best. But in return, we're going to have an awesome second hour, and I'm going to fit in as much news as possible so you guys get as much information as possible. Okay, so remember, use the hashtag TYTLive to tweet to us, and we will read your tweets during the breaks and respond to them when we come back from those breaks. All right, so let's start off with some police brutality that Jimmy Dore will love railing about. A shocking video has surfaced of a sergeant by the name of James Brown who was in Waco, Texas, turning himself in for a DUI. Now, he was supposed to serve 2 days behind bars because of his DUI, but for some reason, there was some indication by the prison guards there that he needed to serve 7 days. So apparently he called his wife and let his wife know that she needed to come over with some money so he can pay the bail and get out of there. Well, unfortunately, he never got out of there because he was met with such brutality that he unfortunately lost his life while he was behind bars. Now, this was video that was obtained exclusively by KFox 14. They did an amazing investigation into this. Democracy Now! Also has more details into this story. We have video showing you what happened. It is graphic, so take a quick look at that, and then we'll discuss.
The video shows something happened which caused Brown to bleed in his cell. When he refuses to speak with guards, a team in riot gear storms in and swarms on top of him, while he repeatedly says he can't breathe and appears not to resist. His condition deteriorates as he is carried to an infirmary and has a mask placed over his face. Towards the end of the video, after Brown has said he can't breathe at least 20 times, he's left naked in a cell, not blinking or responding, his breathing shallow. Attorneys say an ambulance was never called. Brown was eventually brought to a hospital where he was pronounced dead.
So that's a difficult video to watch, and even though we have some more evidence of what happened on that day in 2012, we unfortunately don't have all the details. It's unclear why he was bleeding in the first place, why were authorities called to his cell, but the authorities claim that there was absolutely no foul play. In fact, they blame his death on a sickle cell condition. I should also note that he did inform the jail prior to turning himself in that he does suffer from PTSD, because he is an active duty member of the military. He has been to Iraq more than one time, and so as a result, he has suffered from the mental illnesses that many of our military men suffer from going abroad and fighting these ridiculous wars. But that's a completely different story. I don't really understand why he was met with people in riot gear when he's behind bars in a cell, and when he's begging them to do something about the fact that he's having a hard time breathing. He said, "I can't breathe," more than 20 times.
Yeah. Especially when there's no indication in the video that there's any sort of resistance, that multiple cops would be needed to counter, let alone multiple cops in riot gear. I mean, they were treating him like he was a dead person, effectively, before he even died. They were, like, carting his naked body around as if he wasn't even a human. And honestly, whether he died as a result of injuries sustained in the events that we're seeing in that video, or if it was actually a sickle cell crisis, which could lead to the sort of bleeding that they talked about, but that he received no assistance for because they refused to even listen to him as he's saying, like, you can see there that he's not responsive. He's having some sort of negative health consequence. They can't just ignore that sort of thing. I mean, that sort of negligence is in my mind almost as bad as actually damaging, so that he did end up dying.
To me, the worst. So again, the whole training, the whole mentality of the prison guards is that we have to protect ourselves at all costs, no matter what. This guy was in jail for a DUI, and that's how they treat him because he wasn't answering their questions. So he could be a murderer, he could be a drug kingpin, or he could be an he can be a veteran who has PTSD, who got a DUI, and they treat them all the same. They beat the shit out of you for anything. He wasn't responsive. He wouldn't answer their questions. That's why they attacked him like that, because he wouldn't answer their questions. And he was bleeding. So they didn't go, hey, let's get a doctor, or let's go get a psychiatrist, or let's get a nurse and find out what's wrong with this guy. They go, hey, go get the bats, get our football helmets, let's go beat the shit out of this guy. And that's exactly what they did, because they don't see him as a human being. They don't see him as someone with a family. They don't see him as a veteran or a fellow citizen with rights. They just see him as the enemy. He's something that we got to protect ourselves. So, yeah, this guy might spit on me. Even though he's dying, I'm going to put a mask over his face. Instead of calling a doctor, you saw him laying there. He's not blinking, and he couldn't hit shallow breathing. They don't give a shit. It's like he's not even a person. He's not even a human being. Yeah. So again, these cops, they're not trained to protect the rights of citizens at all. Again, what we talked about in the last hour, Johnny and I, is that it's their safety that is paramount in every situation.
Yeah, and it's important to point out, when these stories come about, there will be those who protect the authorities, and they say, oh, no, well, these people are thugs, and they're troublemakers. It's a DUI, okay?
A DUI.
And he has no prior criminal record. He is an Iraq War veteran, right? And so what also kind of amazes me about this story is this video is surfaced, and you would expect this to be such a huge news story, right? Especially for the mainstream press or politicians who claim that they care so much about people who risk their lives abroad to fight these senseless wars. But no one's talking about it, and it's just another notch on this justice system belt, right, where we just don't care. Not we as in here at the Young Turks, but as a society, we treat people like they're throwaways. They break the law in any way, shape, or form. We don't care about rehabilitating them. We don't care about helping them. We don't care about mental health care. All we care about is the punitive aspect of the justice system. So how can we torture this person as much as possible because they broke the law? And it doesn't matter if you're in jail for a DUI, or if you're in there for raping someone, or if you're in there for drugs. Everyone is treated the same. No prison guard is sitting there thinking, well, that person over there, they're only here for a DUI, so let me be nice to them. No, they're all considered throwaways in society. You see it in one news story after another, and it's discouraging because it doesn't lead to a safer community or a safer country. All it does is it fuels the type of violent crime that we see in society right now.
So I'll make one more point. The interesting thing was that the news people had to fight to get this video. So this happened in 2012, right? So they've been fighting to get this video. There's another case of last week, same thing. They're fighting to get the video over the guy who was shot with handcuffs. And it took a couple of years. Why are you guys so afraid to show the video of your great police work? In fact, and so it's not just one bad apple who's trying to keep, it's the whole institution that's fighting against transparency in the United States, the institution of policing, right? And it's not just this police department, it's every police department from coast to coast who doesn't want any of this video released. How many times we do stories? They have to fight to get video of them killing someone who was arrested for a DUI. So, that to me is the important thing. It's not just that this happened and it was a couple of rogue cops. This is the way it happens, and then the institution then protected these cops from any transparency. That's what's really wrong.
Yeah, if you're paid with our tax dollars, then, and it's the county jail, they are paid with our tax dollars, right?
Yes.
At least the tax dollars of those living in Texas. You should be held accountable. You're getting paid by us. Right. So we shouldn't have a hard time obtaining video of something that might be a little shady, right? When an innocent man is being beaten to death, and again, look, I say beaten to death, but that video is difficult to see. I really question why a SWAT team was called in with riot gear. Like, what are you going to do with that riot gear? You're going to give him a bear hug?
And also, I mean, this, for those of us who believe that body cameras on cops might be part of the solution, the inability in many cases to get access to the footage is, of course, extremely worrying. And those sorts of regulations are going to be extremely important in terms of whether or not we get anything out of. I mean, they're doing body cameras in a lot of cities, but if the footage if it takes 3 years to come out, then how much of a change is that actually going to be able to make?
It's also, Johnny, it started with the drug war in the 80s of not seeing other citizens as human beings, right? So if the cops thought that you were a drug dealer, or you had drug money on you, or you were using your car to transport illegal drugs, you no longer had rights. You're no longer a citizen because they're allowed to break all those rules. They're allowed to break rights. So so it's, again, there's certain class of people, like you said, Anna, they're throwaways. They're no longer part of our society, and we can now trample on your rights. We can beat you up in prison. We cannot. So even if they didn't, quote unquote, whatever they did to them, the beating or whatever they didn't cause him to die. You see him laying there, not blinking, and they're not rushing him to the. They never called an ambulance.
Yeah. So let's say best case scenario for the prison guards in this case is that they didn't beat him and he did die because of a pre-existing condition, right? That's best case scenario, which of course I'm not buying for a second. Well, when he was there saying that he couldn't breathe over 20 times, you did absolutely nothing about it. You allowed him to lay there and die. So no ambulance was called.
And he wasn't resisting. He was already cuffed.
No,
he was already cuffed.
I would imagine that it being Texas, right?
Yes, Waco, Texas.
Probably no good Samaritan laws there. Just watch someone die. It's not my job.
Not my job.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened in Waco, Texas in 2012, and
now they have motorcycle gang shootouts.
Yeah, his family is planning on pressing charges, and as soon as we get details on that, we'll fill you guys in.
He's bleeding out of his ears, nose, and mouth, and they still didn't call an ambulance.
Throwaway society, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if he fought wars for us. Doesn't matter if he's a husband and father of one. He had a DUI.
He deserves to die.
All right, moving on to California. Representative Loretta Sanchez is in hot water after she said some pretty ignorant things about Native Americans. Okay, now she claims she's a big supporter of Native Americans and has done a great deal for their community. However, while speaking to some of her constituents recently, she said some things that some find a little unsavory. Take a look.
He says, I come from the Indian American community. I'm thinking, great. He goes, when can we meet? So I'm going to his office thinking that I'm going to go meet with, right? Because he's an Indian American. And I go in there, and it was great. It was just great.
Wow, what an idiot.
She's running for Senate, so this is not a good look for her. But she has apologized. Before we get to her apology, I want to know what you guys think about this.
So she said so, but then I showed up and it was just great.
It was just
great. Would it not have been great if they had been Native Americans? I don't know.
Look, we don't have the entire context of what she was saying, so it could have been taken out of context. The part that people are upset about is her going, whoa, and just basically reinforcing stereotypes about the Native American community, which I can totally understand is beyond.
Well, she's not a comedian or a late night talk show host who might say that, and you're like, well, that guy's an idiot. That's why he says that. She's supposed to be. She is an elected representative. She took over after Dornan lost in Orange County, which used to be heavily Republican. So now she is the representative of the Latino power in Republican Orange County, and so much so that she feels she has a shot to run for Senate.
Yep.
And she talks like that. I mean, I heard her being interviewed, and you know what? Her positions on most things, that from what I've learned about her, I like.
Yes.
Right? But I heard her also interviewed on local radio here. She's about the worst speaker I've heard in a long time. She can't get her message out. She says stupid stuff like that. Mm-hmm. She doesn't really, and I would like to see a Latino candidate, come to the forefront and have a real chance. I don't think she's it.
So she did apologize for this. She said, in this crazy and exciting rush of meetings yesterday, I said something offensive, and for that I sincerely apologize. They know my record. Okay, this is where she's kind of like covering up for what she said. They know my record. They know how much I have spent, the time I have spent with them and their tribal councils, listening to them, advocating for them. They know that I've always had their backs. And they know that they know what many of you don't know, that like so many Mexican Americans, I am proudly Native American on my mother's side. So some of her favorite family members are actually...
all that time she spent with those tribal councils and she still says stupid shit like that?
Yeah,
what was she doing before?
Yeah, it's surprising. It would be like... It would be like me saying, some of my favorite boyfriends are Mexican, right? And then, look, Mexicans love to eat beans. Like saying something stupid and ignorant like that. Reinforce a stereotype.
Well, my favorite boyfriends are smelly Mexicans.
Yeah, just something really ignorant. And look, I don't think that there was malice in what she was trying to say. I think that she was
trying to be funny.
She was trying to be funny. She failed and folksy, and she didn't realize that in her effort of being funny, she actually came off as very ignorant.
Yeah. Well, also, really fast, I wonder, like, we hear kids will say exactly what she said, and I assume growing up, she's slightly older, that it was probably totally acceptable, and I often wonder, like, as you grow up, some of the things that you were taught as a kid, you don't realize are offensive because you're a kid when you learn it. So, like, if you sit down with your legs crossed, when I was a child, I was told that is sitting Indian style. But now I realize, oh my god, if you were to say that, that's probably offensive. And they call it something else now. I don't even know what it's called because I'm an adult and I don't sit that way. But you have to learn as you grow up what is acceptable. And just because when you were 3 or 4 or 5 something was acceptable, doesn't mean that at a press junket you can say the same thing.
Yeah, you make a really good point because things do change their meaning. So I'm going to give you an example. It doesn't quite fit what you're saying, but I think you'll get the picture. When I was growing up, if someone used the F word, and I'm not saying fuck, but the other F word, of course it was offensive, but it wasn't meant to say something about the gay community, right? It was more like, oh, I'm just trying to ridicule you and just call you a name that's, annoying. Yeah. But now it's become such a disgusting word, and it's used with such malice toward the gay community that the meaning has changed. It's become a lot more extreme, right? So now when I hear it, I cringe, but I remember being younger and you'd hear it, and it was the equivalent of someone saying shit.
Well, and kids of that age didn't know to put that sort of meaning behind it. They had just heard someone say it on TV or, in their day-to-day life. But as adults, we understand that if somebody uses that, they understand the context to some extent at least.
Yeah.
And so there is more hatred behind it.
Well, Loretta Sanchez, she's apologized again, and she said she didn't realize that her saying that would make them go on the warpath against her. So she's still doing it.
I don't think she's still doing it. I don't think she said that.
Oh, she didn't say that, but that would be as if. That's the same thing, as if she said that.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is that she said that. You can't say that stuff if you're running for Senate.
Yeah.
And I spend all the time with them on their time, and that makes what makes it worse.
Yes.
It's like, hey, I hang out with rappers, so I can say the N-word. No, that doesn't. No, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah, you're held to a higher standard when you're running for office, and especially when you're trying to be a senator.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Oftentimes we talk about how money corrupts politics and the media here in the United States, but it also has an impact on education and scientific research. Case in point, Harold Hamm. He is the CEO of Continental Resources. He's this big oil tycoon here in the U.S., and lately he's been very, very upset with the Oklahoma Geological Survey because it turns out that those damn researchers are putting out information that goes against his oil drilling. Now, fracking has had a huge impact on Oklahoma and some other states that aren't likely to have earthquakes. Of course, Oklahoma, time to time, does have small quakes, but nothing big. But ever since fracking began, it turns out that things have changed. There have been more and more earthquakes. In fact, just last year, there were almost 500 or over 500. And so the Geological Survey just needs to give us the information we need to know about what's happening with the oil and gas industry and what kind of impact it's having on the environment. Well, Harold Hamm was so upset about this that he actually sent an email to Oklahoma University threatening to basically go after the university in an implied way, but he definitely indicated that he wanted to have some role in the way that these scientific studies are done. Now, let me give you some information. Larry Grilla, who is someone who works at the university, he is from the College of Earth and Energy. He's the Dean of University of Oklahoma, said Mr. Hamm is very upset at some of the earthquake reporting to the point that he would like to see select OGS staff dismissed. So he's already trying to have an impact. He's trying to get people dismissed. Hamm also expressed an interest in joining a search committee charged with finding a new director for the Geological Survey. And the dean wrote, Hamm indicated that he would be visiting with Governor Mary Fallin on the topic of moving the OGS out of the University of Oklahoma. Now, why are they so worried about what he thinks? Well, it turns out that Harold Hamm has donated more than $20 million to the University of Oklahoma, and so money talks. So just to give you a sense of how much of an impact he's already had, he, of course, has donated all this money, so as a result, the Oklahoma Geological Survey was very, very slow to admit that fracking had an impact on the earthquakes in the state. Okay, so of course you have seismologists and other researchers from throughout the country, indicating that, hey, the fracking is actually having an impact on these earthquakes. And the Oklahoma Geological Survey did not sign on to that until much later.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump in. You guys tell me what you guys think about this, and I'll give you more really depressing details.
Yeah, I think anyone watching this can understand that he's a businessman who has a financial stake in the state of the research into the effect of fracking on the geological activity of that state. But at the same time, if you've been watching our channel, a few weeks ago we showed you the data showing year by year the chart of earthquakes in Oklahoma, and it was nothing for decades and decades, and then in a 3-year span it goes up, and like as you said, 400-fold increase.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live in Oklahoma, perhaps you don't want the state to disintegrate underneath you. And so, he can try to have an influence, but we need to make sure that our universities are at least somewhat insulated from this sort of political and monetary pressure.
It's really difficult to do that because there have been instances of the Koch brothers funding entire departments at universities. And you have to understand, when you have these huge oil tycoons or coal tycoons who stand to make a lot of money or lose a lot of money based on the information that's released from that university, well, they're not going to fund that university because they're just doing it out of the goodness of their own hearts. They're doing it because they stand something to gain or lose as a result. So just to show you what kind of impact he's had after sending these messages to officials at the university, apparently the newly hired incoming director of the OGS, Jeremy Boak, will start work in July. Boak, who has been working as director of the Center for Oil Shale Technology and Research at the Colorado School of Mines, says that he had no communication with Ham or Continental Resources during his interview process. So already we're having people working for that department that would obviously do exactly what Harold Ham would want him to do.
Well, here is the vice president, the university's vice president of public affairs. Her name is Catherine Bishop, and she claims, she was asked about that, and Mr. Ham didn't want to do. So it seems like the people who are getting the most money from this guy are totally in bed with them, and that's what really, people forget, presidents of universities, they really don't do anything except raise money for the university. That's their main thing, is to be a fundraiser, which is how they justify their high salaries now, right?
Yes.
And so that's why this is, hey, this guy's going to give me money. That's my job, to get money from this guy. Fuck academics.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty much what's happening here.
Yeah, and this sounds exactly like the sort of thing we have with actual elected officials, that someone will serve in government and then they get a cushy, high-paying lobbying job working for the industry that they used to have to regulate, and then maybe they'll run for office again and then get another lobbying job. And the one of the few things perhaps that was providing a check on those politicians was that from time to time studies would come out showing actual science that we would have some expectation that politicians would listen to.
Yep.
And I think businessmen took a little while to figure out, well, I can buy out the politicians, maybe I should just buy out the scientists or the universities and have them put pressure on the scientists.
Yep.
But at a certain point, like you said, they took a while to sign on to this, and they still, they'll say, we can't prove that it's associated with fracking, but it does seem suspicious that fracking started right around when there was a 400-fold increase. If not that, is it kaiju? Divine intervention? I don't know what could be causing that.
It wouldn't make any sense. And so the numbers speak for themselves. In Oklahoma, where the number of earthquakes of a magnitude 3.0 or greater increased from an average of 1.6 a year before 2009 to 585 last year, researchers at the OGS have been slower than many others to draw a link between the industry and the earthquakes.
Is everybody running their dryer at the same time? What else could be leading to that?
It's absurd. And look,
Or Chris Christie was. Anyway.
Just visiting.
we got to throw in that Chris Christie joke, okay? It has more of an impact than what the scientists put out there. You guys already know what the ramifications are. We're already way behind when it comes to doing something to mitigate the impact of climate change. And so this is not just about earthquakes. This is about what we're doing to the environment as a whole.
Yeah.
These corporations and these companies and these oil tycoons have absolutely destroyed any possibility of doing something to save the environment. The only thing that we can do, of course, is try to get money out of politics. That is a long process, and I'm worried that by the time we actually do something about it, it's going to be too late. And what amazes me about people like Harold Ham is you don't have a family, you're not worried about your grandkids or family members that are going to be around 100 years from now when things get really bad. Things are already bad, but imagine a century from now.
Yeah, but if he can sell just get a couple more fracking wells, then he could build every one of his family a safe room. Right? That's what he's trying to do. I think that's why he needs the money. He needs a safe room for when the apocalypse happens.
The greed is incredible. He's already so tremendously wealthy. He already donated $20 million to the university. He's that wealthy. I mean, to the point where he can just put $20 million into a university to get the kind of scientific studies that he needs to save his business.
So I wish they would study more CEOs like that. You know, it comes back to that movie Wall Street when Michael Douglas, and they asked him, how much greed, how many boats, how many yachts can you ski behind at the same time? Only one. How much do you need to feel? And so I don't know. To me, I think it's these guys have their hole in their soul and their personality, and they just think more and more will fill it up, and it doesn't. But they don't know what else to do, so they keep more and more and more, and they still have a hole in their soul. And all the oil they sell in the world won't fill it up.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we will read some of your TYT live tweets. So tweet to us, and we will come back with a story of a dry cleaner in North Hollywood that is a bigot. I'll give you the details on that and more. somber music here at the Young Turks. And also joining us is John Idarola, Jimmy Dore. I'm Anna Kasparian. All right, so I read some of your TYT Live.
So serious.
I know, right?
Hi, I'm Anna Kasparian.
It's 4:15 GMT.
I like the serious tone.
I'm trying to be like Marco Rubio talking about 9/11 on September. What did he say again? September 11th.
September the 11th of 11 and 2000.
I die. Okay, so let me read some TYT Lives.
In the 9th month of the year of our Lord 2000.
Of our Lord. You did say that.
All right. Hyro says, what a way for a soldier to die, by the way, surviving Iraq and then coming home to be killed.
By law enforcement. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're fighting a war in our very own country. It just doesn't really get taken as seriously. Julia Mahoney says, the sound she made referring to Native Americans literally made my jaw drop. She's talking about Loretta Sanchez. That kind of casual racism is fucking disgusting. Ruth Iverson says, sometimes I wonder if the GOP chooses such stupid women so they can justify being misogynist. So, if the GOP chooses the women for the Democratic Party, because she's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Loretta Sanchez is a Democrat.
Yeah.
So, look, ignorance does not discriminate.
Yeah.
Ignorance...
I think in this case, she's just, like, as Louis C.K. would say, she's just, like, mildly racist, maybe? I don't think they chose her. There have been cases where one party will put forward a candidate that's meant to sink the ticket for them, but I don't think that that's this.
Look, I know that ignorance is a huge part of racism. I don't know if she's racist.
No, I mean a racialist.
Yeah.
Like, she has a couple of opinions that are out of step with the modern day. That's what I mean by it.
Yes, and Mr. Red Penguin has my favorite tweet. So basically, college presidents are legal prostitutes. Yep, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's amazing because, like, the increased tuition and all the student loan debt that students get into just to go to those institutions is not enough money. Like, I get it. They got to raise more money. By the way, professors aren't really paid that much. Adjunct professors basically work for free. I mean, it's incredible.
They just want to have that endowment, basically. And it's much like Scrooge McDuck. It's a big vat full of gold coins that the president will occasionally dive into. That's what it seems like.
Yeah. All right. An LGBT activist in Russia was attacked while he was participating in the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. Now, his name is Alexander Ermoshkin, and he started this campaign back in 2008 where people will get together and they'll release these rainbow-colored balloons in the air to kind of raise awareness about the LGBT community and basically stand up for tolerance. And as a result, he was attacked as he was walking to the site to release the balloons. We have the video of the attack. Take a quick look at that and I'll fill you in on more details.
It's my destiny.
All right, we did not put the music on that.
Is very upbeat.
That music was already put in the video. I forgot to ask them to take it out, so we'll take it out later. Anyway, so you saw what the attack was, and you saw the aftermath, some of the, injuries that he suffered as a result of the attack. It turns out that 17 LGBT activists were also arrested in Moscow by police. Apparently, there were crowd control police that were concerned about crowd control, so they thought it would be a great idea to arrest 17 people that weren't doing anything wrong. All they were trying to do was release these balloons in the air, and apparently that was enough for the police to arrest them. But as you guys know, it's a really, really difficult time for the LGBT community in Russia right now, especially because they passed anti-gay legislation that would outlaw any type of gay propaganda toward children. So they can indicate or imply that this is anti-gay, or this is gay propaganda.
Now, that kind of backward thinking is happening in Russia because of all the Muslims, right?
Probably.
That's that backward thinking that Muslims, because their religion hasn't gone through a reformation yet, and that's why they're literally arresting gay people and beating the shit out of them for being gay because they're Muslims. Right?
Well, it's obviously influenced by a different type of religion, but I would argue in the Middle East, I mean, Muslims aren't as kind to gay people either. So,
No, my point is that for fundamentalism is fundamentalism. I mean, these are fundamentalist Christians in Russia, and not only are they doing it like clandestinely or just within inside their own community, they're getting the government to institute repressive laws against gay people. The government's arresting
like in America.
Yeah, so that's what's literally happening. I mean, that's not. Yeah, and that's because of religion. That's because of religious Christian fundamentalism. Yeah.
Well, when I say like in America, I mean that we also have Christians trying to get these laws to be passed. I don't mean that the level of violence is at the same level as in Russia. Obviously, it's very, very bad in Russia. Gay activists in America also get attacked, and in decades past, they would be killed very frequently. And so, I mean, we think that, gay couples being willing to be more open and have people see them and meet them, that seems to be generating more tolerance over time. But of course, our situation here comes at the very end of a long train of decades and decades of activism where you were risking your life by being willing to do that. And it looks like that's the sort of situation that's going on in Russia right now. And the scariest thing is that Russia, it's not like a long road that just continually goes towards tolerance. They used to be more tolerant of homosexuals in Russia less than a decade ago. It's getting worse over time. And that, as a progressive, is very difficult to try to deal with.
And Martin Luther King said, "What the arc of the universe is along with justice, what bends towards justice." That doesn't seem to be
not always.
Seems like it's bending the other way.
Yeah. I think that that's an important lesson to learn when it comes to this situation in Russia. Just because you have gained rights for a certain group of people doesn't mean that those rights can't be taken away. And I feel like in the United States, slowly but surely, the rights of certain minority groups have been taken away, especially when it comes to voting rights, when it comes to the way that they're treated by police officials, the way police officials are being protected when it comes to the brutality that they're obviously guilty of in a lot of these cases. So you have to continue fighting for groups of people that have been marginalized or disenfranchised throughout history. And in this case, Russia is devolving in when it comes to the way they treat the LGBT community. And it's scary. It's scary to see it. And to know that someone can be attacked so brutally just because they're doing something so nonviolent scares the hell out of me.
What is the mentality of that? There's a guy with balloons, and now grown men are going to go beat the shit out of him?
But that's the thing. Those grown men have issues, okay? If you feel that passionately about fighting against someone who's doing a very peaceful protest because of LGBT rights, then you're a little shaky in your own sexuality.
Yeah. So that's it. So I mean, that's
my own pop psychology.
Like Russia doesn't have its own problems that it needs to deal with.
Right.
Yeah. So I've always say to people is that straight guys don't care about what gay guys do in their bedroom with each other. Straight guys don't care about what gay people do with their sex, who they marry, how they dress. So I've always said that. So if you have a problem with gay people doing any of those things, you're fighting the gay inside of you, because straight guys don't give a care. I don't care less about what gay people do, right? About what their sex. How does it affect me? It doesn't.
Yeah.
So so I'm like, but in such a grand scale. So is that the, Russia's kind of collective unconscious of homophobia? So is that it? I mean, is it that? Because it's part.
I think it's also one added thing is you have the people that you're talking about, and you also have people who economically there's problems in Russia. Mm-hmm. Things are bad, and when you have a group that the government winks and nods towards, like, if you want to brutalize those people, we're not really going to do anything about it.
In fact, we'll help you.
We'll help you. Then just sickos and people who want to act out will use that. They may not have anything specifically against homosexuals, but they want to beat someone. And so if the government says it's okay, then they're going to do it.
Like the Jews in Germany in the 30s, right?
I mean, like we indicate that you can be attacked.
Yeah, go ahead, give it to the Jews. We won't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that leadership, when it comes to a lot of social issues, is critical. And in this case, the leadership is horrible. So if you have horrible leadership that does give you that wink and nod when it comes to brutalizing a group of people, then of course people will take advantage of it. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Anyway, I feel like this hour is very depressing.
A little bit.
All right, well, since we talked about homophobia in Russia, why don't we move on to homophobia in the United States?
Light things up.
In our very backyard, by the way, North Hollywood, California. Byron Batista went to a dry cleaner in North Hollywood, California, Rosali Cleaners, and he took some down pillows to the establishment to get them cleaned, and apparently the cleaners damaged them. So as a result, he asked for his refund. He paid $75 to get the pillows cleaned. And apparently, the owner of the dry cleaners refused to give him the refund. In fact, she started saying, I'm quoting her, fuck you, bag. Okay? So at that point, Batista was not amused, so he took this case to court, not because of the $75, but because of the principle of the matter. The court did rule in favor of the customer here, and so Batista was expecting to get a check for the money that he was owed. Well, he did get a check, except the check said something on it that kind of made it difficult for him to cash it. Apparently, it said sodomite right next to his name. So he went back to court, talked to the judge. The judge was outraged by this, and so Rosalie herself had to write another check. So she did. This time it said the following: Byron the Bugger Batista. And she made the check out for $75, which is what she owed. It's incredible. So he has to keep going back to court because, first of all, the bank will not cash a check like that. But, I mean, it's insult to injury. She just refuses to do what she's supposed to do. And what's incredible to me is when you do something that goes against what the court has ordered you to do, you can be arrested for contempt of court. So why hasn't she been arrested?
Or that the fine hasn't gone up at all.
Right.
I mean, like, I can't imagine if you're sued and you lose, then you do something like this, knowing, oh, he's not litigious. He won't go back. Of course they're going to go back.
Yeah.
They're going to be caught.
Yeah.
She knew that she would be caught. She has to, at least. And then to do it again, how is the fine at the very least not increased, if not her actually going to jail for a short period of time?
I don't know what the outcome is. I mean, it could very well be that she will face some sort of consequence for the fact that she keeps doing this over and over again. But there's the court involved in the justice system, and then there's the court of public opinion.
That's a good point.
And so people have now chimed in on this story, and they've gone to the Yelp page for this business, and they've left a number of pretty nasty Yelp reviews. And so people are outraged by this, as they should be. And here's the thing. This dry cleaners apparently specializes in leather, and I feel like they're hurting their own business by hating on the gay community. I'm just saying. Like straight people like leather.
Yeah, my brother opened an assless tax bar with no gays. It's like, why are you doing that to yourself? You're cutting your own nose off to spite your face there. And so if it's assless chaps, that's going to be mostly gay guys.
Yes. By the way, I'm joking about the leather stuff. I mean, I don't know if gay guys are...
No, but it's said in the store, literally. He says that the guy, he said, they say they specialize in leather, but she comes back, she says, I want the community to know that if they want leather clean, this is not the place to go. Batista said that.
Wow.
She said, don't come here to get your,
what I don't get, first of all, how could you not think that the bad press you're going to get from this, the word of mouth, is going to cost you more than $75 in the short term? Now, I would have said
are so short-sighted.
I don't even think
That's true.
I don't even think it's about the $75. I think that she disliked him from the beginning. She might have even purposely damaged the pillows, right? I don't think it's about the $75. I think this is because Rosalie, in this case, is a massive bigot, and she wanted to get a point across, and that's exactly what she did, and she's being beyond defiant about it.
Now, if this had been a little bit more recent, it says it was last January. If this was a little bit more recent, I would feel fairly certain that this was a ploy to get conservative money. Because can you imagine, conservatives love to support the Indiana bowling alley or whatever.
You're doing something wrong and ignorant, they'll support you.
They'll support you, but imagine if you were doing it in the heart of California.
Yes.
Oh, you get
in
so
the
much
belly of the beast.
Exactly.
You're being a homophobe right in their gay faces.
Yeah. I don't know worse. I don't know if that's the case.
It is kind of incredible that this business is located in Los Angeles County, which is super liberal, especially when it comes to the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, North Hollywood is a short drive away from West Hollywood, which is, the best area of LA, if you ask me. That's where I live.
Too far.
Too far. It's awesome.
Well, it's ironic that homophobic dry cleaner is now hitting bottom.
My favorite is when Jimmy makes a joke, and then I remember that Edwin's in the room.
Yeah, I love
He can't hold back his laugh. A live studio audience.
Jimmy Dore fan number 1.
Yes. All right, we're out of time, but I am going to do one last story, if that's okay with you.
Leah Remini?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. We'll be fast.
We just have to be fast.
Yeah.
I know the show.
John has to go shoot videos for Think Tank. That's why we're in a rush. All right. Leah Remini has opened up about her, I wouldn't say disdain, but her leaving the Church of Scientology, and she kind of gives us some insight into why she did it. Now, a lot of people don't know this. She didn't choose to be in the Church of Scientology. Her mother was already a participating member in the church, and so as Leah was growing up, she actually went to church with her mother, and it was just kind of something that happened as default, right? And so she was very, very much consumed by the Church of Scientology. She says the following: I don't think people know the amount of dedication it takes to be in this organization. I mean, it was every day, 3.5 hours minimum, 7 days a week, which sounds disastrous. I'm working most of my time, and then the other time was spent at the church, so minimal time is really spent with your family. Okay?
But you have to have your priorities.
It's kind of amazing, but I think she brings up a really good point about how she was raised in the Church of Scientology. And when you're raised in any type of organization or any type of setting, it's just something that you're used to. You don't really question it.
Yeah.
It isn't until there's like a defining moment in your life that you start wondering whether or not this is the right move for you, if this is the right thing for you to invest your time in. And that defining moment did happen for Leah. She says the following: I was on course one day. I was at one of these hotels in Florida, and I saw my daughter swimming for the first time while I'm reading this thing. A tear came down my face. I was like, what am I doing? The moment hit me that I was now doing the same thing to my daughter that my mother had conveyed to me, that what she was doing was more important. So basically she realized she wasn't even really paying attention to her daughter because she was so consumed by her religion.
Yeah.
And that was when she decided to leave.
Yeah, I mean, the point you made about, even though I was brought up Catholic and went to Catholic school for 12 years, my parents are super Catholic, like they almost molested somebody. And
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'll still go to church once in a while, but I don't molest. I'm a lazy Catholic, you know that about me. But I do feel comfortable still when at Catholic functions. You know, I go to weddings or whatever, or I end up at a baptism at a church, or you know, I do feel comfortable. It is familiar. Even like when someone grows up in an alcoholic family, they ended up marrying an alcoholic because it feels familiar. Mm-hmm. So the familiar is kind of comforting. It's like a blanket or so, like that makes you feel, I don't know, like I'm home or something. Mm-hmm. Even though I detest religion, and Catholicism. Yeah, there is something. And so I understand her struggle, even though she sees how ridiculous it is. She's still, it's what shaped her. That's what she's known her whole life. So, so I say full power to Leah Remini. I really like her now.
I love her. I've always liked her, and I like her even more now.
I think one of the interesting distinctions between Scientology and more traditional religions, whatever they want to call themselves a religion, that I got out of watching Going Clear and hearing about this is, most religions will tell you that your family is really important. We are an extended family for you. They try to reinforce that social group. Now, they might tell you everyone else is scary and weird. Don't let them come near you. But they do reinforce that at the very least. Yeah. So Scientology has one version of that. They have, we are your family. We're the most important. But the fact that they make you, in the examples that we've seen, like in that documentary, turn against your family, that's something that you don't really see in a lot of religions. Like outside, like those who leave the religion, perhaps you're supposed to turn against them. You see that in Mormonism and Islam as well. But Christianity doesn't tell you to like backstab against your family at the very least. And so that makes me wonder if long term it can really work, because you see that even her, who was raised in that system, it fights against your natural biological urge to be close to your family. And so I don't think that long term it can spread as long as it has that as one of its apparently core functioning tenets.
That's a really good point. And honestly, I think that their strange disdain for the family structure has actually hurt the Church of Scientology more than anything, because that's really the focus of the majority of criticism they get. Like, they get criticism for many different things, but the fact that family members will be excommunicated for not doing exactly as the church says, I think turns a lot of people off. People know about that. And so maybe some people that are on the fence who might have considered it could have their minds changed by that element of the church.
With that movie Going Clear, ironically, John Travolta's best movie in years.
That's true.
Really good.
That's right.
Which is wonderful. All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Jimmy and John for filling in Jake's shoes for the second hour. That was fun.
One shoe each.
Yes. There will be a post game for the members, so stick around for that. For everyone else, have an awesome night. We'll see you tomorrow.